What's going on, everyone, and welcome back. Last week we finished the file menu bar by adding in pop-up menus. And another video I did last week, we were able to make centered alignment buttons. So the text was aligned to the center of the button. Now, this week, we actually start working on bootloaders. Now, bootloaders is the window that pops up to ask what project you're going to be opening, or bootloaders for games. It says, shows the resolution you can put it at, whether it's full screen, not, button mappings, and so forth. That's what a bootloader is. So we're going to be making the engine bootloader in this episode, as well as do the engine settings file. So the engine settings file is going to have things that pertain to the engine, not to any particular project. So there's a lot of stuff that we gotta get done in this episode, so I guess let's go ahead and start. So the first thing we need is, inside of the editor script, we need the ability to import, export, and edit the engine's settings. Sorry. Alright, so first we need, and I will actually not in here because it's my private variables, over here, say public static final string working directory. Now this is the working directory where we're going to have our settings file and wherever we're going to have all of our projects. This can be whatever folder you want, but I'm going to be doing a specific directory. So for me personally, I'm going to be using system.getProperty, and then for the property I'm going to say user.dir. So it's a user directory plus / logic dash workspace /. Alright, so basically user directory is the current directory that we're working in. So whenever we run it from the IDE, this is our current directory, this logic folder, so it'll actually show up in here. But then whenever we build it, it'll be wherever the jar, the build file itself is. So it'll be really easy to locate where the engine is and where our project directories are, because it's going to be in the same folder. Alright, and then we need some of the settings. So let's go public static final string editor version. Now this is going to be the version of the editor. This is going to be really nice for whenever we add updates to the editor. We'll be able to add, pop-ups that say, hey, this is what's new in this version. But if it's already if you load the engine, it's an editor version that you already have, it's not going to pop that up. But we're not going to do that right now, but for now we can just go ahead and set it up. So right now it honestly doesn't matter. It's just something we can put in there. some kind of data. So I'm going to say 0.1 because it honestly does not matter. Later I'll actually be using the number episode that we're on, but you don't have to if you don't want. It's whatever you want to name it. All right, so I think everything else we could just make private. You know what? I'll just keep it together. That way we know that whatever's in here is for the settings. So let's go private static byte config init equals 0. So this is just kind of like a Boolean. We're just using a byte instead because, like I've explained before, bytes are 1 byte versus a Boolean where it's a lot larger. So it's basically just checking if we have initialized the configuration yet. So next is private static string working. No, we've already got working directory. We need the hold on, let's change this. Workspace directory, and here we're going to put working directory equals that. So this is the directory for our workspace. So the folder that we're working out of. This is the working directory, which is the directory of the current project we're working on. So that's the difference between the two. And then we need, actually I think that's all the variables we're going to need. We're just going to need the initialization. Let's put it right here because the initialization function is actually going to be called before this anyways. So let's go with public static void init config. So this is what's going to be called to initialize the configuration. So in here we're going to say if config init equals 1, then we're just going to return out of the function because it's already been initialized. And then set config init equals 1. And that's how you do a check whether or not to actually run the function or not, to check to see if it's already been initialized. That way we don't initialize it multiple times not paying attention. Alright, so file config file equals new file workspace directory plus, and we're going to say config.properties. And import that. So this is our configuration file. So if it has a configuration, it's not going to do anything. If it doesn't have a configuration file, it's going to create it. Alright, so yeah. Alright, so now we need a TryCatch because we're going to try to read in the configuration file, and then if it fails, then we're going to do something else. So the first thing in here, we're going to say file reader R equals new file reader, and then pass in the configuration file. And then right here we're going to say properties P equals new, come on, properties. Let's get these in here. And then underneath that, I'm going to say p.load R. So we're going to load the file reader into the properties. Now we need to grab the recorded version. So string recorded version equals p.get property version. And this will grab the version that is currently inside of the configuration file. So let's do some nifty stuff and check whether or not the recorded version is different than what we already have. So to do that, we can just go if not editor version dot equals recorded version. Then for now, what we're going to do is we're just going to say system dot out dot println version changed. So it's going to print out that there's a version change if the version is different. If it's not different, then we're going to print out in same version. So then it'll tell us that we're on the exact same version that we were last time, so not to worry about it. And then down here we just have to close it off. So that's pretty easy. Now we have to write the catch. So for the catch, we're going to be using a file not found exception. So catch file not found exception E. So this is basically saying that no configuration file was found, so it must be a new user, saying that this is the first time that they've ever actually used it. Why are you asking me for that? Unhandled exception. We'll get back to that. I don't know why it's asking me to add throws declaration. I've never actually had that show up before. I don't know what's going on with that. Alright, so if they're a new user, then we're just going to call system.out.println new user. So then it'll tell us that it's a new user. So since it's new, we actually need to create the configuration file. So we're going to call save config file. So we're just going to pass that in. We'll create this function in just a minute. And you know what? Throw system. Let's do this. Let's add another catch. So catch IO exception E. Then we're going to say E.print stack trace. And that should get rid of whatever in the world's going on with this right here. So that'll fix that nonsense. All right, so now that we can initialize the configuration, now we need to be able to save it. So public static void save config file F. And the only reason why I'm using a parameter right here is that way I don't have to create a new file and do the same thing that we just did up here. It just saves us from doing that. We just pass in the file that was created. So right here, we're also going to need the exact same thing as we did up here. So, you know what, let's just, hold on just a second. Okay, just had a kid knocking on the door. Alright, so let's just copy that and I'll paste it down here and just remove some stuff. Alright, as for these, I can just copy that and I'll just paste it right there because we don't need any of that. And go right into this. All right, there we go. So now we've got the TryCatches already in there and we don't have to type it out. So right here we need file dir equals new file workspace directory. And that's a capital F. So now we actually are creating the directory for the workspace directory. And right here we're going to say dir.makedir. So it makes the directory if it doesn't already exist. So let's say you just accidentally delete the configuration file. So it sees you as a new user. So instead of just creating a whole new directory or like rewriting that directory, dir.makedir will just create the directory only if the directory does not already exist. So then right here we say properties p equals new properties, and then say p dot set property, and then we're going to be passing in version, which is the same as what we have up here, the get property. And as for the value, we are going to pass in editor version. So whatever it says up here. So anytime we need to change the editor version, we just change it right here, and everything else will change. It'll do its thing. So that sets the property inside of the file. Now all we have to do is say file writer equals new file writer, and then pass in the file. Import. There we go. And then say p.store writer, and then I'm going to call it logic configuration, and then say writer.close. And all this is doing right here is just it's just kind of like a comment telling me what the file is, and that's all that is. So you don't have to worry too much about that. So that is it for the configuration. So we can go ahead and test this out. So if we hit play, oh wait, we're not actually initializing it yet. Whoops. Come on. Okay. Right here in the core, the very first thing we're going to do is we're going to initialize this. And it's going to be called before everything, no matter what. So we're going to say editor.initConfig. The only thing that's going to be before this is checking whether or not we're in the editor or it's a game build. That's the only time something is going to be called before this, and that's it. But we're not that far, so right now it's always going to be first. So if we go ahead and run this, as you can see, it printed new user. Bam. And then if we run this again, it should say same version right there. And if I go in here, if I change that to 0.2, so it's a new version. Version changed. Bang. And that's how that's done. It's very simple. And if we come up here, let's go ahead and refresh this project. As you can see, it created the logic workspace directory because this is our current working directory. And there's our config.properties, just like that. All right, so properties is completely done. Now for the actual bootloader. Now for the bootloader, it's just going to be straight up Java. There ain't going to be nothing lightweight Java game library to it. So if you're familiar with Java, this will be extremely easy for you. So I guess we can go ahead and stick it in here because we're not going to be using this bootloader if it's a game. So let's call this engine bootloader. All right. So if you're not familiar with Java, this will actually help you a lot with if you're creating your own programs in the future, or you're wanting to know like windowing stuff or whatever it is. It'll help you with your core Java programming. So yeah, so even if it's not game related, it'll still help you out. So the first thing we need is a JFrame frame. Now JFrame is the actual swing window. Here we're going to say private static container. Come on. Container pane. Now pane is the container inside of the JFrame. We're just storing it just so that we can use it through multiple functions without having to continuously get the pane from the frame. Here we're going to say private static string return string equals null. All right, now the good stuff. Now, something in here you might actually learn even if you know swing in and out. Since we're loading this, like throwing up a whole new windowing system in the same thread as our game windowing system, we know that our bootloader is going to show before the engine or the game shows up. So there's only going to be one window open at one time. Well, if we just wrote in here in core, if we just wrote engine bootloader.init, it's going to initialize the configuration, initialize the bootloader, and just immediately go into loading the engine or game window. Well, we don't want any of that. So we're going to say if return string does not equal null, then I want to return out of it. And that's going to help us with initializing as well. Because if we have not returned a string yet, then we know that it hasn't been initialized yet. But if we've returned a string, then we know that it has, and to bounce out of it. So the same thing that we did earlier, except for we're just using a different way. So in here, I'm going to call a method called createWindow, and we will do that in just a minute. That way we don't have so much code inside of the init function itself. Just so that we can cut it down a bit. So now what we have to do is we have to say while return string equals null. So if the return string has not been changed from null yet, we're just going to continuously cycle this code. And the reason for that is we don't want the game or editor window to pop up until we have a string to return. And that's how easy it is. It's very simple. And to do that, right here we can say try thread dot sleep, and then we can just pass in a 1. It honestly doesn't matter. Like, you can put in whatever number you want right here. You can run it for as many milliseconds as you want. You can put 100. You do whatever. It's completely up to you. There's no specific number that you have to put in. And for the catch, we're going to be using an interrupted, and spelling it wrong, interrupted exception E. And here we will just call e.printStackTrace, just like we do everything else. And that will do that. And why are you doing this? Thread.sleep. Why are you? Oh. Stupid me. Okay. So it should look like that. I was trying to put it inside of a bracket. Alright, and then after we sleep, we're going to say if frame equals null, then I want to break out of it. So if this window that we just created is no longer on the screen, then we know that we have a return string and to break out. All right, so next we need to call frame.dispose, and this makes sure that the frame is no longer there. So regardless, we want to call that, just in case it still needs to be disposed, because there's plenty of ways you can do that. You can exit the window, bang, or you can hit whatever button we have down here for loading a project. So we want to make sure and have methods that will catch all of these things. That way we don't have any bugs in the windowing system. So we're going to call editor.openProject return string. We will get to open project in a few minutes as well. Next is the create window function. So we need to call private static void create window. Now inside of here we're creating the actual frame and creating the panels and buttons and all this stuff. So frame equals new JFrame, and say logic bootloader, and that's going to be the name of the window, so you can name that whatever. So after we create the frame, the JFrame, we need to pack the frame. And after here, it's just basically just setting the size of the window and whether it can be resized or not, or what happens whenever the close operation is called, and so on. So we need to say frame.set size, and this is going to be the size of the window. I'm going to be using, I think it's 300 and 350, because I have an image that I want to render in the background later on down the road, so I know that this specific size is something that I want. And we're going to say frame.set resizable false, because we don't want to be able to resize the window. Frame.set default close operation, jframe.exit on close. So whenever the frame gets called to close, we want to exit it, because there's several different options. You can have do nothing, which is kind of stupid, because if you click on the X, then nothing happens. So let's say I click up here, it's not going to close. But I mean, there's several different things you can do. It's up to the user, really. So then we need to attach the pane. So frame.getContentPane. And As for the panel, let's go ahead and create another function for that. So create panel. And the way that I'm going to be doing this panel is I don't want any automatic layout system. I want to lay it out myself. If you're familiar with Java, you can do it however you want. Just me personally, I don't like to use predetermined layouts because it's just, I don't know, it gets all sloppy and mixed together and doesn't work right. And I always have issues with Java's layout system. I don't have any issues with C# layout window. It's just Java's in particularly, for some reason, it's always getting me, so I always turn that crap off. So do that, we're going to say frame.setLocation relative to null. I'm going to say frame.setVisible to true. So that's going to set it to be viewed. And in here we're going to say private static void create panel. And that will get rid of that error. And in here it's going to be everything that's in this panel for this window. Yeah, for this frame. So jpanel, panel equals new jpanel, and panel dot in the world. Come on, use. There. What was I doing? Oh. Set layout null. So this is going to close this layout. So there isn't going to be any layout that we're going to be using. All right, let's go ahead and get the workspace directory file. So file equals new file, editor dot workspace directory, and import that. And file temp equals file dot list files, file colon is a directory. So what this does is it gets the workspace directory, and then we create a variable that is going to hold all of the directories inside of that directory. Pretty simple. The only issue with this is you get null occasionally, depending on if you have, like, if you have other things in there that is not a directory, then it's going to return null. I don't know. It's freaking retarded. I don't know why it just doesn't give you an array of just the directories. Like, why do you have to pass in null if it's a file? It's stupid. So in order to fix that, we need to actually just loop through it. So firstly, we need to say list string dirs equals new array list of string. That way we have an array list we can pass it to. Import array list, import list. And here we can say for int I equals 0, I is lower than temp dot length, then I plus plus. Same old crap. And here we're going to say if not temp I dot get name dot equals null. I believe it's all lowercase. Then we're going to say dirs dot add temp I dot get name. So whenever I said null, it's not returning straight up null. What it is the name of the file will be called null. So that's how that returns. So if it does not equal null, then we're just going to add it to this list. And then at the very end, we're going to say dirs dot add new project. So this is going to give us an option to create a new project from within this drop down. Oh, I guess I didn't really explain what we were doing. Right here, I'm making a drop down list to choose a project that has already been created or to create a new project. So we're creating a list so that we can pass it into this drop down. Probably should have explained that before. So here we need string output, which is going to be the list of strings that we're going to be outputting, of course. It's going to be equal to dirs dot toArray output. Has not been initialized. Wait, what am I doing? Did I never initialize it? I thought I did. Just not add. You know what? We'll come back to this in a minute. Let's go ahead and initialize it. String output equals new string, and then we need to pass in the amount. You can say temp. Would it be temp.length? It'd be dirs.size. There we go. And now I can say output equals dirs.toArray. I mean, I might be able to just put this in place of that and not have to size it first, but I don't know, whatever. It's already done. Alright, so now we need to create the combo box. So, ComboBox. We need to pass in a string. Or, not pass in a string, but it's a ComboBox of strings. So, project box equals new ComboBox of type string. Let's go ahead and import that. And project box dot set bounds. And what set bounds is basically the same as how I'm saying like GY dot box or whatever, and then you pass in the rectangle of where it's going to be rendered on screen. That's what set bounds is. Except for it's a little weird because set bounds doesn't use like like pixel size, it uses like some other size. So if you want it on the right side of the screen, like barely out of view, and if it's 100 wide window, then it would actually be like 50 or 60 or some stupid thing like that. So you just kind of have to like wiggle it to get to where you want it. All right, so as for the X, I believe if I put 70, that should put me near the middle. Now as for the Y, I don't know. We'll see here in a minute. I'll put it at 0 for now. I'll say 150 wide and 24 pixels high. All right, so now we need a begin button. So let's go J button. Come on. Begin equals new J button begin. So the begin button is just the button that you push to go ahead and run whatever project is currently selected in the ComboBox. And that's all that is. Okay. So let's go ahead and set the bounds. So begin dot set bounds. I'm gonna make this 80, I think 80 wide. So I'm gonna put 100. Let's just add a random Y value and see where it puts us. And 150, and we'll go 25 high. Okay, so now we need an actual action listener for this button so that we have something to some kind of callback. So we're going to say begin dot add action listener new action listener do that because it's going to screw me over anyways. Drop that back. There we go. And import that. And so inside of here, you need to close it off like so. All right, and inside of here, we need to add unimplemented methods. This is the method we're going to be implementing. Is the action performed, just checking what action has been performed for this button. So we're going to say string C equals E dot get action command. So that way it sets it inside of a variable so I don't have to type so much. And say if C dot equals begin. So it will pass in the name of the button if the action performed is that button. And that's how action commands work. So then I'm going to say string selected string equals string project box dot get come on get selected item. and that will get the current selected item. So I'm going to say if selected string dot equals new project. Then I'm going to say return string equals my project. Else return string equals selected string. Okay, so what this is if I clicked on, or if I'm trying to start a new project, then this is what the default name of the project is going to be. I'm just calling it my project. So if you want the default name of the project to be something completely different, by all means change that. This is just what I'm calling it. So just so you know, if you want to change it, it's there. Alright, now panel.add project box and panel.add begin. Now pane.add panel. So we're basically just adding the drop down and the button to the panel, then adding the panel to the pane. And that's how all that works. So I'm still missing open project. Let's see here. Oh yeah, because I haven't even done anything with the working directory yet. Awesome. Okay. So save config. Let's take this. Wait. Let's take this. Because init config I want first. Drop this down to right here. Alright, so now we can work on the open project method that I completely forgot. So, public static void open project. So, string name. So whenever we click on it, it's going to call this function from the engine bootloader. That should, yes, get rid of it. Alright, so in here we're going to say working directory equals workspace directory plus name plus slash. So that's going to set the working directory name. Change to working directory. What did I name it? Oh, that was a lowercase. So this is going to open whatever project is on the folder, like whatever we clicked on. Now for right now, since we're running out of time, we can't really do a whole lot. So what we're going to do is we're going to set it up for new project and not worry about opening up a completely different project as of right now. So we'll just make this part 1 and maybe the next video go into part 2 and possibly something else. So let's go ahead and get this finished. So file projdir, so the project directory equals new, come on, file working directory. So that gives us the working directory. If not projdir dot make dir, then I want to return out of it. You know what? Let's not do this. Let's just call proj.makedir. That way later on, whenever we add folders to this directory, it'll just go ahead and do it only if the folder is not created. So we'll use the makedir on that. And it shouldn't write over anything. So under here, let's go new file working directory plus start with font slash makedir. And this will make the font folder inside of the working directory. So font is first. So then we can actually do just like we've done in the past. We just copy, paste, 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 paste. Change that from font to materials. Remember, make sure everything is spelled correctly. It has to be spelled exactly the same as in here. Same with the capitals and so on. Go skins, sprites, and textures. Actually, I think I am going to need that. So right here, let's go with Boolean, oops, what is it, capital? Boolean new project. How about that? New project equals that. So then that will tell me if it's a new project or not. And that is it for here. But let's I'll place down here and I'll say if new project return, and I'll say in comments put opening of project stuff here. So anything before here is all for just new stuff because it's new, so there's not anything we need to actually open. So then down here, we'll just write all of our actual opening code whenever we get to it. So after the editor.init config, we need to call engine bootloader.init. So we need to initialize the bootloader. So let's see here. Click play. See, this is the window size that I'm going for, is something along the lines of that, because I don't need anything enormous. So I hit OK, and same version. Oops. I'm not getting anything in there. It's just an empty thing. Maybe I screwed something up somewhere. But anyways, bootloader, create panel. Let's go ahead and change this a little bit. I think I see kind of where I want it. Not 100% sure, but I think we're going to go with 100, 250, 150, 25. I think that was too far to the left, or too far to the right, I mean. 70, let's push this down. Let's go 210. 150, 25. Alright, let's see where that pushes that down. Okay, so that's the right height. And it's roughly centered in there. Let's go ahead and push this button to the left. Let's go 80. Let's go 180, 25. Let's see what that looks like. Alright, perfect. There we go. Alright, so then that lays it out. And I'm going to have an image that goes over top of here, and there's going to be a box that's drawn out right here. And it'll have like the Logic logo or whatever right here. So that's what I'm going for. So right now it looks very basic just because we're not rendering anything in the background. But it'll eventually look nice. Alright, give me just a second and I'll figure out what's going on with this drop down just so I'm not taking any more of your time. Okay, you know what? Stupid me didn't pass it into the combo box. So whenever we created the combo box, right inside of these brackets, we need to pass in output. And that's it. That should fix it. Okay, there we go. So now it allows us to create a new project. Alright, so here, let's go ahead and refresh this. Alright, so this is what it looks like right now. It's just the Logic workspace configuration properties inside of it. So if we hit play, we've got new project already selected. Let's go ahead and begin this project. So once we hit the button, it will load up eventually. I've got a lot of background processes going on. Alright, so then it loads up the project. Of course, all this stuff I have static in there. We're not doing any of that. We're mainly focused on creating the folder. So let's refresh this. And bam! Project has been created inside of the workspace directory. Alright, with the my project name. So if we run this right now, say my project, because it's the first project that was pulled. And then new project down here. So if we want to create a new project, just hit that, open up the old project right there. So if we exit out of this, and let's refactor this, rename. We're going to rename this to demo project. Alright, so the name was changed to demo project. So now whenever we load it up, demo project. So it's all in real time. All right, so next week we will either be getting into saving a scene. Yeah, we'll probably get into saving a scene before we get into loading the project. That I think would make a little bit more sense. And then we could do all the importing stuff all at the same time. All right, so yeah, that sounds like a plan. So next week we will get into that, allowing us to save our scene out. That way we can load it back up and try to speed this process along to get into this runtime fun stuff. All right, well, thanks for watching, guys, and I will see you next week.